Yeah, yeah. No, I think for the other, they're live streaming. So, yeah. So thank you so much for coming this afternoon. We're going to start. I'm going to introduce myself and my colleague Jessica. So Jessica Collins is an occupational therapist and research assistant at the Shriners Hospital in Montreal, and I am the coordinator of the clinical research department, and I am also an associate professor at McGill University. So we're here today to provide an update on the research project. Ooh, this is not good. We don't see anything. We see it all here, but it's not being shared. Okay.
Not sure what it is, but
Okay, great. Okay, yes. So what we thought we would do today is to give an update of the different research projects we are having right now at our hospital and to really gain your feedback and to see how we can adjust those projects to make them more meaningful or relevant to yourselves and to your families. So please feel free at any point if you have any questions or comments, really just to step in and share. Okay. So I'm going to start with a few projects, and Jessica will add on midway through. So first, we just wanted to mention how we developed the research program in arthrogryposis, and we established this program in 2015 to really improve clinical care of children with arthrogryposis using a collaborative approach. So what we did is, as you see on the bottom, we had two events. The first one on the left was a planning meeting that involved mostly doctors and clinicians, and we had Annie come as well to represent more AMCSI. And what we wanted to do at that day is really gather everyone's priority for research purposes and start planning and working together. I did notice, though, during that day that although it was really positive and we got a lot done, that we were lacking the voice of youth with arthrogryposis, adults, and their families. So we then planned and we were funded for a knowledge exchange day that gathered over 120 children and families and clinicians in Montreal. And we had a few activities that day, again, to really work together and prioritize research directions to build on this program. So I'm happy to say that we currently have 8 research grants working with different centers and hospitals as well, and a multidisciplinary clinic devoted to arthrogryposis. So in summary, what we learned from the Knowledge Exchange Day were these were the research priorities that came up: understanding genetic causes, what interventions work, what exercises can be done, and the presence and management of pain. So do you feel that you can relate to some of these priorities? Do these seem important to you? Yeah. That's okay, but we want to hear from you too. Anything else that any other priority that you would have that yes. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, that's important. And I'll get back to that when we talk about the registry we started. We have a component on GI, and I'll come back to that. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, you're welcome to come in. Anything else in terms of parties? And of course, these were just the top 5, the top 4 even. There were many others in terms of gaining autonomy in self-care and looking at participation in the community. So there were many other priorities. It's not that they're not important, but we just shared here the ones that rank the highest. So the current research programs, well, we'll talk today about, Jessica and I, are 5 projects that are currently happening. The first one is the pilot and a multi-site arthrogryposis registry. The second one was an international effort to look at the definition of arthrogryposis collaboratively and try to expand on that for clarity and to have a standard definition. The third is a home exercise program for youth using telerehab, so telehealth, so all through telecommunications virtually. The fourth one is Photovoice, which Jessica will talk about projects 3 and 4. And actually, we brought a few of those pictures that the youth took, and they're exhibited outside in front of the main ballroom. So you have there some of the posters. Oh, D,
Next
sorry.
to D, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can look at those as well. And the last is I'll be presenting on behalf of my colleague, Dr. Sawatsky from Vancouver, who is not here today, a few slides on her project on a registry for adults with arthrogryposis as well. So we work together on those projects. So the first one is the pilot of the registry. What we wanted to start is a registry for arthrogryposis for youth, because we know that in order to advance in rare diseases, we need to work in multi-site, and we need to gather a lot of information to be able to understand. So we were funded from Shriners to start a pilot, which has now ended last December. It was a 2-year project that we did with Shriners Philadelphia and ourselves. And what we did is we developed the data sets. We asked experts to rank them in terms of validity. And then we piloted that project with 20 families in Montreal and 20 families in Philadelphia to see whether these data sets were relevant, whether the families had anything to add, was there anything that was unclear. So I want to share today a little bit the results of that pilot and mention to you what the next phase is for that registry. So on the bottom is just the article that came out describing the protocol for the pilot, and the findings are right now in print for this project. So these are just the data sets that we asked. So you'll see that we do have a section on internal abnormalities and feeding, etc. And that we actually added. We hadn't thought about that initially, but when I had the meeting last year in Ohio, some of you were, I asked again, this is a registry, this is what we're collecting. And some of you mentioned feeding is very important. Other parents mentioned developmental milestones. So we've included that in the registry. So I very much value your feedback so that we can then, as much as possible, integrate that so that it's very relevant to you. So these are the different data sets that we collected for the pilot. And so this is just a rundown of how we recruited the families. And at the end, we did have 40. So how we collected this data was through a telephone interview with our 40 families. And we also collected medical charts. So we were interested in knowing how the pregnancy went, how the birth, the delivery, and the child's first month of life. So we collected this data through an interview, but as well through medical charts when it was possible. And we then compared the two sources to be able to decide moving forward which source would we be using, either the interview or the medical chart. So basically, this just summarizes the findings from the 40 children that were recruited. So we have about equal male and female. The mean age of the children was around 8 years old. And we see that the birth weight and the gestational age is quite varied. And we did have 11 babies out of 34 that were small for gestational age. We are missing a bit of data because we had 4 or 5 children that were adopted. So we were lacking the information from birth. We also looked at, spine anomalies, foot and casting, so interventions done early on, and we see that, not surprisingly, many children had issues with their spine and their feet at birth, and casting for club feet was very common in the first month of life. We were also interested in looking at the placenta and the cord, the umbilical cord, because studies have shown that the placenta and the umbilical cord are very good predictors of outcome later on. So we have a very small sample here, and that data we collected from the medical chart. I would never remember for myself what the placenta of my kids looked like, or the weight, etc. So this is why we have much smaller samples here. But what you do notice for the umbilical cord length is it's on average in those 4 was 25 centimeters. However, the average for healthy babies is 55. So we see that on average, but mind you, it's only on 4, so extremely small. We can't have any conclusions based on this, but the cord lengths were much shorter in this case. And in terms of genetic, we asked families if their child had any genetic testing, and if so, what those results were. There were very few that did have, well, about half, but then the identification of the genes was lacking in most. So we really had only few findings from the genetic reports that were conclusive. I think the main issue with that was because the testing was probably only certain gene specific or panels. And we know that today, really, to do the best genetic evaluations, we would need to do either whole exome or whole genome sequencing. And that was mostly not the case within those families at that point. And you can stop me if you have any questions, please don't, feel free to do that. So I just want to say that we learned a lot from that pilot, and moving forward now we were funded for a 4-year registry, including Shriners Canada, Shriners Philadelphia, Shriners Northern California, and Portland. And basically what we really want to do is look at demographics, risk factors, functional outcomes, and genetics. So we learned from our pilot that the genetic portion was really understudied, and therefore we were funded to do whole genome sequencing in a portion of our participants to provide this information to our families, but to learn from it as well. So this is just a map showing the recruitment. We're really east or west. So hopefully we can expand in the future to other sites as well. And basically we will be recruiting, our plan is to have 300 children recruited in this registry. And again, this is a busy slide, but just to tell you, we'll be expanding. So we will continue to do that telephone interview to gather the data I mentioned earlier. But we also want to evaluate each child when they come into our clinic with the same set of questionnaires so that we're able to pool all that information together. So we'll be using standardized questionnaires that look at how the child gets around, so mobility, ambulation, their autonomy and self-care. We'll be using the WIFIM. We'll be looking at pain using a standardized questionnaire as well. Do these youth have pain? And if so, where is it? And how can it be described? So we really want to learn more about this population. And as well, we'll be looking at history of intervention. So over the span of the years, what interventions did these children have? So this registry, the idea is not to answer specific research questions necessarily, but really be a platform to generate more research studies. And the last is really the genetic aim, which is to understand more in terms of the genetics and do whole genome sequencing and try to really piece the pieces together. So the phenotype is really how we present ourselves, our characteristic traits, and the genotype is really our genetic background, and to really match both. So that's for the multi-site registry. And of course, the expected contribution is to learn more about genetics and the use of outcome measures, and have larger sample sizes to draw more research upon. The next project I want to briefly mention is we wanted to define arthrogryposis, so to look at a definition that we would develop together with experts in the field. So what we did was we did a literature review and looking at all the descriptions in the literature on arthrogryposis. We narrowed down all the keywords and we invited 10 participants and we asked them, if you would describe arthrogryposis, what components should be included? And we put all those pieces together and we then used a modified Delphi. So basically what we did is we used a survey and we reached out to over 53 participants and we had about 25 that participated in 3 different rounds until we got consensus for a definition for arthrogryposis. And the final step, what we did is following that definition, what we did is we asked experts in the field to work together. They represent, these experts, 7 or 8 different countries and different professional backgrounds as well. So I'll show you that. And so basically what we asked them is then to expand on each sentence of the definition to be able to give more details. So this is a bit long. There are 8 sentences in this definition and it spans different areas. So it starts with the clinical definition or description of arthrogryposis. It mentions then the causes, the joint and muscle involvement, and the progression of contractures over time, the different body systems that may be involved, and the impact on function. And I can just tell you, you have the authorship on the bottom. So we have researchers and professionals. We also have parents of children with AMC and individuals with AMC themselves, adults, and from all kinds of different professional backgrounds, orthopedics, genetics, epidemiology, plastics. What else am I looking at? Spine experts, dentistry, rehab, and neurology as well. So this is presently in press, and we did prepare, yes, we did prepare a research brief. Um, so just in line. So this is basically a summary, a two-page summary that just explains the process of the definition and what it is. So it just now. And the goal of this is really to standardize the definition for arthrogryposis, but really not coming from us, but really encompassing many different experts in the field, so that moving forward, there's a more standardized understanding of this term. Any questions on this? Okay. So the third project I'm going to have Jessica go through.
So the third project, it's a home exercise program for youth with the AMC. And this is really a pilot trial project. So we're actually in the middle of doing it right now. So the main objectives of the project is really to evaluate whether using telerehab to deliver an exercise program is feasible, and to assess the potential effectiveness of this home program. We hypothesize that participation rates will be pretty good, and the satisfaction of the patient participants will be good, and it will ultimately reduce costs, so overall cost of getting rehab services, going to appointments, missing time off work, etc. And that it will ultimately improve muscle force, joint mobility, pain reduction, and overall functioning. So this pilot project is very small, so we're recruiting 10 youth with AMC and their parents. The age group we are targeting is 11 to 21. And the criteria is that they be able to communicate in French or English. Since we're in Montreal, we have a lot of Francophone participants, so we can exclude them. And the exclusion is any cognitive deficit. We really wanted the participants to be responsible for their home exercise program, and if they had any recent surgery, whether it was bony or soft tissue. Essentially, the program, it's a 12-week program. It starts with an OT and PT evaluation, all online. We'll get into little details of what that evaluation is. After that, for initial evaluation, there's goals that are set and a bit of a problem list. So then our PRT, which is the equivalent of a physiotherapy aid, I believe, in the States, provides an individualized home program that's based on the goals that were set. And then within that 12 weeks, there's check-in points at week 3, 6, and 9. And there they can kind of make sure that the PTA can make sure that the exercises are doing properly. If they need to advance any exercises or change anything, then they can do it at those points. And the participant is asked to complete this exercise program at least 2 to 3 times a week. And it lasts around 15 to 30 minutes. So the program is not this crazy long program. It's we try to make it as doable as possible. And so the outcome measure, so during that OT and PT evaluation, we do a goal attainment scale. So that's where the participants set their goals, and then it's kind of, it's graded. So when we do the final evaluation, we can see whether it's improved or not improved. We do range of motion, which is, it's difficult. We're proving a little more difficult than we thought. Essentially, we ask people in front of their webcam to position themselves in certain angles so we can get the proper angle, let's say for elbow extension, and then we take a screenshot. We bring the picture into a program called Canivia, and there you just kind of get your landmarks and you can measure the range of motion. So we can do during that initial and the final to see if there's any change. Before the initial evaluation with the OT and PT, there's an online questionnaire. So this is done initial and the final. So there we have a pediatric pain tool to see if there is any pain. And that it's a tool that we can describe where it is, and it's kind of has some nice keywords that they can use to describe the pain that they do have. If they have any pain, there's a physical activity questionnaire and a pediatric outcome data collection instrument, so the POTSI that we ask. At the end, during the final questionnaire that we have, it's a satisfaction questionnaire. So it's really just a kind of a general to see what they liked, what they didn't like, anything that could be changed. This is a pilot, so we're trying to learn from this one. And the parents are also asked to fill out a cost questionnaire. So this cost questionnaire really kind of covers any expenses that they do occur over a 12-month period in terms of rehab, seeing specialists, any surgeries, hospitalizations, ER visits, and time off work, time off leisure activity, time off any kind of homemaking, anything really, just to kind of get a general sense of what a 12-month period will look like in the family. So far we have 5 participants that have been recruited. So it's really within Canada so far. We have 2 from Quebec, 2 from Ontario, and 1 from Saskatchewan, which is kind of middle Canada. And their ages from 11 to 20. And you can see on the right-hand side, or your right-hand side, the goals are pretty varied. There's some pain management goals, improved walking endurance. One is like be able to use his left hand more when you play sledge hockey, buttoning up a shirt, riding endurance. So it's quite varied, which is it was fun to see. So far, from the 5 participants we do have, we had pretty good participant satisfaction and pretty good attendance. So we had 100% attendance. 3 out of the 30 appointments had to be rescheduled, which is pretty impressive. I don't know if anyone you ever worked at a clinic before, but that's pretty good. The only thing we haven't yet analyzed yet is the cost and compliance. That's kind of for our first objective, feasibility. The second objective, the effectiveness. So we really have to go through those all of our range of motions to see if there's changes, in the questionnaires that we had. The goal attainment scale, though, was kind of scored before and after, and I think everyone reached their goal or pretty close to it. There's some quotes here of some from the satisfaction questionnaire. So kind of saying that I was motivated to do the prescribed exercise. They provided me with much moral support. And it's one of the few reasons that I continued participating. So having those check-in sessions was important. I think he also said that it was to increase the span. So instead of 12 weeks, have it 12 months, which will be fun, I think, if we can do that. And also the remote follow-up, so saving on travel time and having fast results. And, oh, yes. Yes. No. So it's really specific to those goals. So the goals that were set, it's like, so let's say for the sledge hockey one, it was really kind of working on shoulder range of motion and hand strength, really for that. And that's why the before and when they score it again, it's really, we're scoring those goals again. I mean, we do a full evaluation to see if anything else kind of improved, but we're focusing on those goals.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I can just add that actually when we presented, I have a master's student and she's working on this project. When she presented to a team of researchers, it was actually almost criticized. It's not a standardized program, but we really believe that for children and youth with arthrogryposis, everyone is different. And also, like Jessica mentioned, we use a tool called the Goal Attainment Scale, which is a very cool tool where we ask the youth to devise their own goals. And then the whole program is developed according to their goals and their physical assessment. So Caroline is the OT that does the virtual assessment, and our physio, Rita, does the physical therapy part of the evaluation. So they're actually sometimes together or sometimes not, because the beauty of this is all we need is a telecommunication link. People can actually be, and sometimes this happens after hours. We try to schedule, obviously, at a time that's convenient for the parents and for the youth. So it's not uncommon that these sessions happen in the evenings, even on the weekends sometimes. So it's really, the program is really individualized to each youth. Yeah. Thank you.
Some little quotes from the section. So our next step is to kind of recruit our final 5 participants, analyze all the data that we were going to collect, and kind of learn from our mistakes and get the participants' feedback to really tailor a much larger and bigger project, and get funding to have a larger one with more participants. Okay, so then next.
So maybe before we go on, maybe just to make it a bit more of a discussion, we have about 15 minutes left, but before we go on to the next project, in terms of that tele-rehab project, are there any comments or suggestions, or do you think that any components that could be added to it to make it more motivating. I know when we presented this last year, there was a comment about trying to see if we could integrate almost like a gaming aspect to it, where the youth could motivate themselves. So that was something that we weren't able to work on in this pilot project, but that we've really retained to see if it's possible to incorporate in a larger study. But I wanted to really see, and from your ideas or feedback, what you think about this project, if you have anything you'd like to share. Yeah.
On webcam. Yes, in person.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, yeah, so the so the 2 to 3 times for the 15, 30 minutes, that's on your own. And then at week 3, 6, and 9 is a check-in with the PT aide. That's it. During that first initial session, to give the home exercise program, all the exercises are gone through, and then that way at week 3, we'll they kind of say hey, how are you doing your exercises, and they can correct anything or change anything. Yes. So the TRP gives the exercises and shows you, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And then she gives a written home program, emails it to the participant. What's he doing? Have the they almost record themselves doing it, and then they can copy.
So almost like sharing more of an interactive program. Is that it? So
to have the actual exercise program, okay, hold it, or whatever, 10 more reps, 10 more. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, because now it is written it's
more like static. It's not
that's it.
dynamic.
It's a picture. There's notes. Okay, you'll do it 5 whatever reps. So maybe.
So to make it more dynamic and movement, almost like a short video that would tell you,
like an exercise video,
right,
those Beachbody exercise videos, kind of.
Right. Great idea.
No, but that's a very good point.
Very good idea. And we could because
we do record them anyway.
All the sessions are recorded, so we keep all those, and definitely, absolutely, that's a great idea. Yeah. And to make the recording more valuable for them, because really it's all about these youth, and yeah, absolutely. But those are great ideas. Thank you. Anything else? Any questions or comments or suggestions? What about the age range? We initially, I have to say, when we wrote this is a funded project by a Canadian network. So we had to keep our participants within Canada because of the funder. Initially, I wanted to do it more for 16 to 25 years old. It was worded that way for more adolescents, young adults who are kind of out of the pediatric system or on their way out. However, because we work in a pediatric hospital, we had to limit to 21. So we kind of lowered that age range to 11 to 21. I don't know what you think about even targeting younger children. It would have the additional aspect of meeting probably a member of the family there as well. But do you think there's a need for that? I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's it. You need to have that, the goal almost like.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone is motivated by different things too, so to find almost what works for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there was one
Mhm.
I didn't mention this for time, but we provide all the youth with a polar watch, so it's like an activity monitoring watch. And they were told to when before they start every exercise session to start like an activity, so we can see like whether it's walking, so we can see the steps, or even just the calories burned, whether their heart rate kind of went up. And for some of the participants, it actually motivated them a lot. Like we can see their stats, like, oh, I worked really hard on this one, and um, so that was, and it was a way for us to kind of, and we had like the master of all of the watches, so we can see, okay, are you been doing your exercises? Have you not been doing exercises? Uh, and then go from there. So it was a bit motivating for some people. It worked, and they're going to continue using that watch. But,
Mm-hmm. 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 That's a great
yeah.
point. Yeah, for now, it's part of a research study, but of course, the end goal is in research to see what works and what is beneficial and to try to translate that into standard of care or into a clinical, how can I say, service. So it would be wonderful to kind of have that. And that's why we really want to look at the cost because those questions will come up. Administrators will ask, well, how much does this cost? The issue, if I'm really transparent, is that a lot of adolescents are not followed regularly, during this age range. Anyway, from our experience, Lisa, I don't know how it goes down in Greenville, but therefore the comparison is nothing for some, for some, you know. So it's just trying to really justify the importance of um, having the service and the benefit. Yes, yes, yeah,
And then,
yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing
yeah.
that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah, was
those.
there
for
another
sharing.
question? Or okay. Just to get those recommendations.
And we could just add to that, we have one participant actually that the program and the evaluation was provided at school. So she had, maybe you can explain that,
Yeah,
the
so
educator.
the like it was an educator or somebody who like does her stretches during gym class anyway. So we did the sessions with her educator aide that does present there, and she kind of made. I mean, that was our most, I guess, compliant patient because she did every 3 times, 4 times a week because she had that already in her schedule. And it was just because I think it was the same idea. She's a little bit in a rural area in Saskatchewan, so she only sees her physio maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years to get her home. And then they were going off the same exercise program for the past year and a half. So they just kind of got and just the little gains that she did in the 12 weeks were more than she got in the past 12 months, just because we were adjusting as needed. So it was a similar situation.
And that's another point. So because the TRP joins in every 3 weeks, she can readjust the program, and they've also mailed equipment, so putty to work on, strength, TheraBands. So it was very, it worked really well in that way. Yeah. Yeah.
To having an outside person to kind of
Yeah. I mentioned this to students last week, and one of them was very into gaming, and he said, maybe there could be like an avatar built in, and then with points when they do their activities, they could buy gear or different things. So that's coming back to the motivation piece. What motivates each one to make it more interactive as well? Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
Photovoice, yeah. So I'll go quickly over another project that's going on. It's a Photovoice and AMC. So Photovoice is a methodology that essentially uses pictures to tell a story, to have people represent themselves. So it's used in various different populations. And essentially, they show their pictures, and it kind of it's a way to start a conversation within a group. So we did this project last summer, 2018, and our aims are really to kind of try to empower youth with the 11 to 18 with AMC to express their perspectives. We use pictures as the medium to have the youth tell a story and represent themselves. Yet again, this was done all on the internet, so using webcams. So we wanted to kind of recruit from anyone around the world if possible. And this particular one was semi-structured topics, and it was led by an occupational therapist and a social worker. So the groups were really, it was set in, it was 4 focus groups. There was an initial questionnaire, but this was kind of a basic demographic questionnaire just to kind of gauge the level of function and where everyone's from, and age, and et cetera. The first group was really more of an introduction group, and it gave information more on the project and what to expect, how the other future groups would kind of go about. After the first group, though, all the participants were told to kind of go off and take pictures on what makes their life with AMC easy. And then on the second group, the pictures were shared. Everyone had to kind of talk about their pictures, and the conversation kind of started amongst the group a little bit. And then the third group, yet again, they went off to pictures of what made their life hard. And then within the third group, they were asked to share, same format, discuss their pictures, tell them what the pictures are, whatever presents. And then the fourth group, was to kind of try to link the pictures together to try to find common themes. We used methodology, it's the 6 F words, which is family, fun, friends, function, fitness, and future. So try to group them into those like key 6 F words. That's where I guess the research part tries to fit into this project. And then they were asked to fill out a final questionnaire, which was more of a satisfaction to see how they enjoyed the group and how we can kind of improve. The satisfaction questionnaire was the public and patient engagement evaluation tool. So we got 6 participants, one from Nevada, South Carolina, one from Spain, Ontario, Canada, Massachusetts, and Ohio. There are various levels and ages, so 11 to 18. We got 28 pictures in total, and they were included, like I said, whether facilitators or barriers. And so this is some examples of the pictures. So as Noémi mentioned, in front of the Salle D, the DC room, it's a little bit of our art show that we were able to kind of create after this. We showed it in the Shriners Canada during one of our multidisciplinary AMC clinics. So you can we can go through them a little bit. She looks a little familiar. So I'll let you, this one I found funny when I first saw it. We got the picture before and I was like, oh, this must be like a barrier. She must have not. And then when she told her story about it, I was like, oh, makes sense. So she actually used it to put on, like, for dressing, to put on her shirt. And this is a little, so at the end, we did see that, I don't know if it was during the summer, so our participation did kind of diminish throughout the groups. We only got 2 final questionnaires, so during that satisfaction. Out of those 2, it was pretty positive feedback. We did have some ways to improve with scheduling, so having more of a regular time. So I was trying to tailor the scheduling to everyone in the group. I would ask, like, what's your availability? And then we would try to, like, find a day, and it was a bit of a headache. But it was a good idea to maybe have, like, maybe not so structured, like having more like a drop-in session at it, like every day on Thursday at 2 o'clock, like have it a schedule so they can come in and out. It's not necessary, it doesn't have to be so structured. And maybe having more written material to better prepare. And some of the comments we got was from that satisfaction questionnaire was not feeling alone, feeling better with themselves, knowing that they're not the only person with AMC. Not everyone has I know a lot of people with AMC, especially if you're from more of a rural area, and knowing how others relate to their own lives, feeling more confident, etc. This is a project that one of our colleagues had. So we kind of took this, so we really want to get the perspective from key stakeholders, which is the youth, the caregivers, and clinicians. So we want to go on a different route with our next project in summer 2019, so now. So use the results from that evaluation tool and also include participatory action research methodology. So actually including a young adult with AMC to co-animate these groups with either an occupational therapist or social worker to kind of have it kind of made together, and maybe have the group themselves identify the theme instead of us imposing a theme, having it a little bit more open, very general, whatever happens, whatever kind of comes up. And this will kind of increase the relevance for the stakeholders. So finding out what is relevant to them themselves instead of trying to impose a group. So like I said, we're trying to do it for summer 2019 using a youth research partner. And the group decided by the theme decided by the group, and this will be 4 to 6 sessions, depending on the group, and that could be also decided. So if you like more information or want to participate, you can contact me. We also have some flyers that we'll leave around, even next to the poster. So, and do you have any questions on that, or I think we're running out of time a little bit, but
Again, if you have a comment or suggestion for this, we will only hold the group, of course, if we have minimally 5 or 6 youth that want to participate. So, again, we would make this available for the youth to have this platform in which they can connect and have a protected area with, someone that's experienced to co-animate. But I don't know if you have any comments or suggestions with regards to that. Okay. And the last, thanks, Jessica. So the last project I want to share with you is actually the work of my colleague, Dr. Sawatsky, who's from the University of British Columbia, so on the complete other coast. And what she's done with a group of people on which I'm privileged to be part of, is to create a registry for adults by adults. So what's very, how can I say, special about this research team is that it's half led by adults with AMC and half led by researchers. And basically the purpose is, it comes from the need that we really don't know what happens to adults with arthrogryposis over time. So there are a few articles now in the literature about outcomes in adulthood, and that stems all from Bonnie's work, actually. So this is the reason why she decided to create a longitudinal registry of outcomes to be used internationally. So for adults with AMC from around the world. And basically it regroups two types of questionnaires within it. So it's all again electronically. So basically for those of you who are interested or for the people who want to participate, they consent electronically and then they have, it's basically a survey that includes standardized questionnaires and non-standardized questions as well. And we decided upon the types of questions together as a consensus with the research team. And so different areas that are covered are pain, are home life, areas of autonomy, independence in everyday life, work, employment, and non-employment, and quality of life. There's also questions about sexuality, etc. And so what it requires is that the first year, it's really a 30 to 45-minute survey to cover all those different areas. And then yearly, it would be a much shorter snapshot, so about 10 minutes. And every 4 years, they would be a repeat. The goal of that is really to see change over time and to be able to look at different associations. So what can improve quality of life or what seems to decrease it. So we can only do that in longitudinal studies, so studies that go over time versus at one point in time. So again, if anyone is interested, the process to participate is really to email the lead researcher, Bonnie, and because then she sends an individual link which is secured for that person to log in for security purposes, and then they would get the link to complete the questionnaire. So I do have, I think as well, a few leaflets on that. Oh, it's at the end? Okay, so if you want to grab the leaflet on the adult registry, Bonnie has put together with her team a newsletter on the adult registry, so you're welcome to grab one, and we'll leave them, I guess, somewhere next to the main ballroom for people to take. And we're very excited to share that the 4th International Symposium on Arthrogryposis will be held in Canada in fall 2021. And we'll be putting a program together soon. And I want to really acknowledge the whole research team and clinical team and different individuals who are extremely helpful, students and research staff, to make this happen. It's really a big team. And we can always only do this when we work together, and the different funding supports that we have for those different projects. So if you have any questions or comments, I did not put my email here, did I? But I think it may be in the program. But if you ever want to email me, if you're interested in participating or have ideas for a different project, we're always listening. It's at the end of the pamphlet. Thank you, Lisa. So any questions or comments about any of this? Yes. So if there's no other questions, we'll stop here. Thank you so much. And then we have Caroline's session that's about to start soon. Thank you. Caro, do you want me to open it from here?
Yeah.
Whoops. Hmm?
I think we have it actually.
Oh, you do? Okay, so then maybe I'll get out of here.
Just take the HDMI. It's gonna like you.
Sure.
talk in the microphone. Is this better? Okay. So hi everyone, my name is Carolyn. Just to give you a little bit of the background as to the development of an upper extremity evaluation tool for children with AMC. So I'm a clinician, I'm an occupational therapist working at Shriners Canada. And how all this stemmed, this development, this idea, I'm actually doing my PhD on this. So this all came from the fact that we were working on a other research project, and other clinicians, therapists, occupational and physical therapists kind of helped us navigate the fact that there was no standardized tool available for kids with AMC. There was nothing that we could use either for the upper limb or the lower limb, for the spine, for any type of evaluation. So that kind of sparked the little idea. And by talking with other families, caregivers of youth, and parents, and essentially everybody involved, this is kind of where the development of an upper extremity evaluation tool came. So this is definitely a team effort, and I want to start off by saying that this is a small portion. And so everybody here helping out. So there's Delphine, who's a medical student, Noémi, clinical coordinator, Jess, our OT and helper as always. So what this little session is going to be is more of a workshop. So when we're looking at the development, what we can do is we want to base ourselves off of what's in the literature. However, that kind of gives us a little bit, only a certain train to follow for the items and the activities that we use to evaluate. Should I be talking? I'm sorry. However, before we do that, before we develop that tool, just looking at the literature, we really want to get an insight into what's important, what's deemed important from families, from youth, from caregivers of kids with AMC. So that's why this session is really the first step into this development, and is to kind of help navigate us in this brainstorming of these activities or these items that are important, and to kind of go through a discussion and rank after those priorities. So we have Noémi, Delphine, and Jess to kind of help facilitate, and myself as well. So I think based off of who's here today, we can probably do it over one group. So if you would all just take 1 minute or two to really focus on this question. So when a therapist or a rehabilitation professional is assessing you or your child, so the arm as a whole, the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, the hand, the fingers, the thumb, what do you think is an important aspect or item to consider in this evaluation? So it could be a simple task. I'm not going to give you any ideas yet. Or it could be, a bigger activity, but something that really focuses on the arm, and as an evaluation that when you come see an occupational or physical therapist, what is important that you find? So we could all just take a minute and reflect on that. And then we're going to kind of base your answers off. We're going to write them all on the next slide together. So just take a minute to think about it. And we're going to go around the room, and hopefully everybody can answer or share a little thought. So far, is that okay? That there's no right or wrong answer. It could be something that's specific to your child, or something that's maybe broader or larger that you're kind of anticipating in the future. So really, there's no right or wrong answer. And just so everybody's aware, we're recording the session audio, just so that after we can kind of always refer back and see if when we're developing this tool, we can refer back and look at these items that were mentioned. So maybe just another minute or so. So is it all right if we kind of just start going over those ideas together? Yes? Head nods? Yes? Okay. Perfect. So Delphine here is just going to help us write down these little ideas as we go by. So hopefully we can kind of go around the whole room and everybody can share an idea. So if we start, just because you're on my right-hand side. Okay, so it's playing like catching a ball. Okay. Okay, perfect. Okay, what do you mean specifically by that? Mm. Okay, so it's more of a social. Okay. Okay. Perfect. We're skipping over. Yeah, I know. Would it be possible to know how, like what age group you're talking about when you're saying that? I mean, specifically elementary. Okay. That's perfectly fair. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Okay. So is it more reaching like their mouth, or is it more, for example, to reach their mouth, or? Okay. Perfect. Right. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Yeah. If we were to go behind. Okay. Okay. So to have a component that really looks at.
So if I may add something, that's exactly what we're trying to develop. So a lot of clinical stuff has been based, for example, on like range of motions or very concrete like clinical steps. So we're trying to see what would be some functional goals that you have. So if, for example, you say, for me, I think it's very important that my kid is able to give a hug or grab a drink or walk. So,
Potty training.
okay. Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. If we scoot over, yeah. So eating, specifically, is there a component of eating or just the act of physically reaching your mouth? Okay. Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yes.
Sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Adaptive.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the trajectory that most therapists working with kids with AMC go on. Is just that specifically if we wanted to develop something that was more standardized that we can apply to just, cookie cutter, this is what we have to do to evaluate them. Is there, a certain thing that we should be navigating? Range of motion?
For which specific joint or which specific?
The whole arm? Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Green balloon? Mm-hmm. So is it very related to the developmental milestones? Okay. Right. Yep. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Flex. Okay. So really an individualized. Awesome. Perfect. If we can hear from. Mm.
So I see kind of your point that some steps might be less relevant than others if if I'm re-saying what you're saying in the right way. So for example, crawling might not be an essential step while walking might be something important. So what would you say would be some interesting functional goals that are essential? So for example, like grabbing a pen like this might not be essential, but would you say grabbing a pen in any way is one, or do you have like examples like this that you could give us as someone with a lot of insight? So I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. We're going to try and continue our turn. So if we will continue, we'll pick a couple of people. Everybody's going to have a time to say other items. We're really trying to see if we could generate some ideas about some functional goals. So some things that came up. We're trying to write them so not to forget them, and eventually we'll be able to have a little bit of time to discuss them further. So is there any other goals that you have in mind really for the use of upper arms that sparked to mind, like the way you're holding a pen? So I don't know if, sir, with the blue shirt, you had something to contribute? Mm-hmm. No, it's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Okay, because when you're a newborn, it's difficult to have like very clear goals or very clear steps. Right. Like a clear path. Okay. Thank you. So flexing here and maybe flexing elbows. So here at the back, I don't know if you had something you could. Two? Throw things?
Throw things. Okay.
Okay. Absolutely.
As a kid, yeah.
Okay. Incentive.
The motivation, yes.
Right. So sharing the numbers of the range of motion. I'm sorry. Okay, that's very interesting. So I think we've made a whole turn. I don't know if some people want to have other items that they could add, or we can just start the turn again. I don't know if you wanted to add something.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And
Dressing.
dressing. Okay. Do you, right. So do you think it would be helpful, for example, to have like a list of ADLs per age to achieve? Yeah, it's difficult to be concise. Right. Yeah. So hopefully, yeah, that's hopefully what we're trying to do. That's absolutely. So that's very interesting. Yeah. So really something that's home based instead of clinical based. Right. Of course. Wonderful. Okay. Great. Okay. Okay. Wonderful. I don't know if in the blue sweater you wanted to add something or an activity. Okay. Yes, if you.
So like a routine.
Okay, eat cereal, whatever. Mhm. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt and we're going to try and continue and we can get back to the discussion later. I don't know if in the back you had something else to add that sparked up to mind in terms of activity. You're using the wrist, so touching wrists
Picking up an
together,
object again.
the pinch grip, pincers and hip. Okay. Holding a bottle. Okay. Wonderful. Any, yes? Okay, very age specific. Wonderful. Mm-hmm. Driving a car. Mm-hmm. Using a key. Mm-hmm. Preparing food. Mm-hmm. Sorry? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you had something you wanted to add in the back in the red shirt. Oh, hair care.
Managing hair.
Okay, so not only mouth.
We're getting spam.
Sorry.
Okay. Are there any new ideas before we move on to the next step? Light switches? Yes, so yeah, we said the natural versus the clinical environment. Yeah, okay, perfect. Okay, so this is wonderful. What we can do now is maybe discuss a little, so these are basically the ideas that everybody generated here. So if we can maybe discuss a little more or delve into more of the certain ones that you find important, or maybe we could even start like maybe combining a little bit the ones that are repeating. So for example, we said throwing and catching a ball, so those ones we can maybe combine the two. Or, well,
Is there anything that we've named here that you feel could be more specific? So, for example, like for you, is there an activity for example, eating that could be something like broken into smaller steps, or that your child has like one very difficult step to do? I don't know if you wanted to. The ability to use adapted objects. Mhm. Okay, so making sure that the scale that we use is something that can be reached, whether with an adaptive tool or without, for sure. And it doesn't really matter in the end how you do it.
as long as you complete it.
Yes, of course. Independence. What do you consider, how does your child find independence? What do you think is important for you that they're be able to do by themselves? Like what specific activities? Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So
With him. Okay, so unfortunately, as much as I'd love to continue discussing, I think the next step is going to be to do the ranking. So basically, what we want you to think about, and I'm going to bring back the other slide up, is we're going to pass around a new set of cue cards, and I want you all to think about the ranking priorities. So all the other items and activities that we discussed, I want you to either break them down into three components. So it's important and essential, it's important but it's not essential, or it's not really relevant right now. So I'm just going to repeat it, it's fine. So we're going to give out a new set of cue cards, and we want you to rank the activities or the priorities that we just discussed in the other slide that I'm going to show you again into the three groups, A, B, or C. So important and essential. So this is something that we really have to consider when developing the tool. Something that's important but not essential, so we can kind of just get around with, kind of having an informal interview with the parents, or something that, we don't need to know this right now. So I'm just going to bring up the ideas. And if it takes, you could just write the number in the right column if you want. That's why we number them this way. So I didn't catch that, sorry. Yeah, for sure. So when we're going to, so it's not going to be a survey, it's more going to be an evaluation that the therapist is going to complete with the child. So when we're going to be developing this evaluation, because it's still, you know, in the works, we want to consider these items that we've worked out together. So exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's going to come from the tool itself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So some type of scoring. Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna add that. Scoring and recommendation. Yeah. I'll leave it. I'll leave it. We'll just leave it. Essential and important. B is essential but not important. Important but, sorry, not essential. My bad. And then the C is not relevant. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Did everybody have a chance to? Yes? So I just wanted to thank everybody here. Put back? Okay. So I just wanted to thank everybody for attending today's session. It's really, really important for us when we're developing these tools, not only just to base ourselves on the literature and what's, you know, the limited literature, I should say, but really your guys' expertise, experience, and lived experience is really what's kind of helping us develop this important tool. If anybody wants my email address, I'll put it up at the end, or feel free to contact me if you have other ideas or you want to kind of further develop a certain aspect. So thank you all very much.